Today we have a very, very special guest, and it is my absolute honor to welcome Chantal Bilodeau, playwright and also the founder and artistic director of the Arctic Cycle. So a few housekeeping things before we begin, and I turn the mic over to her. First of all, welcome to all of you. I am so thrilled again to see some familiar faces and also some brand new faces here with us today. So a quick introduction. I am Molly Braverman, she, her, the director of the Broadway Green Alliance, and the BGA is here to educate, motivate, and inspire the entire theater community and its patrons to adopt environmentally friendlier practices. And today we are going to be talking about doing that through one very important means, a means that we all have the ability to do, which is use our voice and our stories, but certainly one that theater people are particularly well equipped to do and use. So with that, questions, please feel free to put them in the chat as we go, and we will have plenty of time for a Q&A afterwards. We have, oh my goodness, live, sorry, people are coming in, it's great. We have live captioning going. You can click on the top where it says Otter AI Live Notes if you need live captioning. If you have other access needs, Chrissy, if you want to wave and raise your hands, please feel free to private message Chrissy, and she will be more than happy to assist. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chantal to take us away. Thank you, Chantal.
Thanks, Molly, and thank you everybody for being here. I will share my screen now. Hold on just a second. And here we go. So I'm very happy to be here with you today to spend this hour together. I'm going to be talking about stories and climate storytelling in particular. As Molly said, I am a playwright and the artistic director of the Arctic Cycle, which is a New York-based organization. And our mission is to use theater to foster dialogue about the climate crisis, create an empowering vision of the future, and encourage people to take action. So first of all, I mean, the question we need to answer, I think, to start with is why stories? Why are stories important in telling, in talking about the climate crisis? Stories, this is not going to be news to anybody, especially if you're in the theater. Stories are how we create meaning. If you look at the world and just consider the facts in themselves are random. There's a lot of them. They're not necessarily connected and they don't create meaning. Facts are just what happens, you know, one thing after another. And for example, if you were to list the facts in your life or in somebody's life over the course of a day and look at them at the end of the day, it probably wouldn't mean much. It's when you start connecting them, you know, extracting the ones that are the most meaningful if you're looking at one particular thing and linking them together, that's how you create meaning. And essentially that's creating a story. So stories are how we look at facts, weave the tissue that connects them together, and create meaning for ourselves and to understand the world. Another thing that is important to think about for our purpose today in terms of stories is I like to divide them into two different categories, which are formal and informal stories. And what I mean by that is, what I mean by formal stories is stories that are intentionally created for public consumption. So, you know, what we read in the paper, we see online, on TV, books, podcasts, visual, and I would put the visual and the performing arts in that too. So all the stories that people will spend time crafting to then offer to an audience. And then the opposite of that, or the flip side of that, informal stories, are all the ways in which we tell stories to each other without even realizing it. For instance, the first thing we do when we meet each other is say, how are you? So we're inviting a story, right? Tell me the story of how you are. and that answer will guide, I'm good, and then this is my story of why I'm good, or I'm not feeling so good today, and this is a story of why I'm not feeling so good. We also tell each other stories, in teaching environments. When we go to school, we learn things in conversations. Jokes are stories, advices are stories. And these informal stories are actually very formative. We start hearing them when we're really young, even before we can understand language. And they shape how we see ourselves and how we see the world and how we perceive our purpose in the world that we understand to be. When we, the stories are so powerful that neuroscientists have shown that they transcend language and culture. So they are, no matter where you go in the world, no matter who you talk to, people have been brought up and are existing in a world that is just made up of stories. And stories are also the best way to learn and to communicate. Now, what does that mean for climate change? It's a little bit the same thing. So there are the facts that the scientists will research and share with everybody, but how we connect those facts to our own lives and to how we understand ourselves to be in the world, that you need a story to be able to understand, or not one story, but actually multiple stories to be able to understand these things and relate it to your personal life. I want to show you here. So when we talk about climate change stories, especially the formal stories, what we see is often the same kind of narrative. So these are magazine covers that were published for Earth Day last year in 2019 by the Washington Post magazine. And they published what they call 24 magazine covers about climate change, which illustrated an aspect of climate change that the Post wrote about the year prior. So this is a sample, there's only 6 of the 24. And they're a good representation actually of the formal stories that we hear about climate change. And as you can see, they show a very specific and sort of uniform narrative, which is a narrative of disaster and failure. So and not to say that these things are not important and that we shouldn't be aware of them, but there's definitely a focus on everything that is going wrong. And the trouble with that is that if there is no flip side, if that's the majority of the stories we hear, then it can become very, it can make us numb or terrified because it becomes very disempowering. There's the feeling that all these things are happening and it's bad, it's getting worse, and there's nothing we can do about it. And again, I want to stress the fact that it's not that these things are not true. It's just that it's not the only truth to it. Like there's more to that story to understand. And there's more that can actually change how we perceive the problem and how we act. So that's why it's important to have the other side. Also, these are the formal stories. And now I want to relate this to our informal stories with this graph, which is from the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication and the Center for Climate Change Communication at George Mason University, who are two institutes that have done a lot of work in understanding how Americans are reacting to climate change and what their value system is in relation to that issue. So this graph shows how often Americans discuss climate change with family and friends. So we're back to the informal stories now. And as you can see, the black line is people who rarely or never do, and the green line is people who often or occasionally do. So 63% of Americans say they rarely or never discuss climate change with family and friends, and 30% say they occasionally or often do. And this is from April 2019. So as you can see, the concerns about climate change are not making it into our informal stories, which means that we're not really grappling how how we fit in this reality. This reality is affecting us. It's still something like we read about it in the paper, we have all this bad information, and it's whoops. I get so excited I lost my headphones, and it's not being processed. And if you compare that to any other personal issues, for instance, if there's a death in the family or somebody's ill, or any kind of challenges, we all know in our personal lives that it's something, if we don't talk about it, if it's not being processed, then there's something, you can't deal with it unless you're able to really engage with it. So there's a big distinction between this being told, the formal stories we're being told, and how those stories are making their way into our personal lives. And of course, I've been doing this kind of work for over a decade, and I didn't know, this graph is from 2019, so I didn't know all of these things when I started. Still, I had the sense that something needed to be done, and so I'll just give you a little bit of the origin story of my work. This is a photo. This is me in 2007 on a trip to Alaska. So I had a friend who lived there. I had never visited him. He still lives there, actually. And he runs an air taxi company out of Denali National Park. And he had always said, you should come and visit me. I'll fly you, over the park. It'll be amazing. And it took me years and years, but finally I went. And 2007 was the year after Al Gore's first documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, came out. And it was also, so this conversation was much more present in mainstream media. And of course, Alaska was experiencing the impacts of climate change much more severely than we were in what they call the lower 48. So my visit there, and also it's very, you can see it, it's very obvious, you can see the lines where the glaciers have receded, where they've deflated. People were talking about berries not being, the season for the berries being different, and migration patterns changing. So that experience, because I'm trained as a playwright, I took that experience with me, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write a play, response from a playwright. This is important. I'm interested. I want to do research, find out more. I'm gonna write a play. And so that's what I did. I wrote one play called Sila, which is about the impact of climate change on the Canadian Arctic. I'm Canadian. So I knew that country very well. We have a huge Arctic territory. After I went to Alaska, I decided to do some research, and it was like, okay, I'm going to write a play. So wrote a play, and in the course of, and this was, my first foray into this. So I did a lot of research to understand climate change more, because I had, next to no information at that time. And in the process of doing the research and talking to people, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I think there's more than one play. I have more than one play about this topic. So I wrote another play. And the second play is is set in Norway, in northern Norway. I was able to go on a artist residency, which was on a sailboat that took us for 10 days around a group of islands that belongs to Norway, but sits between the mainland of Norway and the Arctic, and the North Pole in the Arctic. So wrote a second play, and then I'm like, oh yeah, but it's not enough. So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna write a cycle of play, which is why my organization is called the Arctic Cycle, because that was the origin of the idea. I'm going to write a cycle of play that takes place in each of the 8 countries that are part of the Arctic Circle. And so here you see a map of the Arctic from the North Pole. And the play, so this is still very much in process. The play about Canada is written. Sila about Norway is the play forward is written. I'm currently working on a play that's taking place in the US, in Alaska. And that was supposed to premiere in now, essentially, but it was postponed, and now we're hoping for the spring. And then the other countries that I still have to cover are Russia, Greenland, Iceland, Sweden, and Finland. in the process of doing that again, I thought, okay, this is all very nice, but we're talking about one person, one voice who is writing these full-length plays that take years to research, develop, and produce. And so I felt it wasn't, it was taking a long time, and this was still limited, and that the need was much greater. I felt like we needed to put a lot of stories out into the world from as many different perspectives as possible. And it needed to happen fast, because we don't have that much time. It needs to happen right now. How can I do that? So in 2015, I, along with a few colleagues, we created this program, this program called Climate Change Theater Action, which now has taken place every other year. So we did it in 2015, 17, 19, and the next one is coming up in 2021. And the goal, well, first of all, what it is Climate Change Theater Action it's a worldwide series of readings and performances of short climate change plays. The plays are all 5 minutes. We commission them, so we commission 50 plays every time we do it, and we make sure that every inhabited continent is represented. And then we give a prompt to the writers, and they write their plays. Once we receive the plays, we have this collection of plays available, and then we make them available to everybody who might be interested in organizing an event within a time window. So this always takes place in the fall. It goes from September to December, and we say, okay, in this time window, you can use one or many plays from this collection. You can add more plays, by local playwrights. You can, and the event can be anything you want it to be. So it can be, sometimes it's just students reading the plays as part of a class. There are people who have done stuff in their backyards with friends. There have been full productions in theaters, or, as part of a season on the main stage of a university, of a theater program. A lot of site-specific work outdoors, at the foot of glaciers, on kayaks. I mean, it's really amazing what people can come up to. There's also been, people have done podcasts, radio shows, it hasn't always been live. So we make it as open as possible in order to give people agency, and to say, like, we're giving you an incentive, and then you can take that and run with it. In addition to the plays, we say to people who want to organize an event, please try to include an action as part of your event. And so this is where we feel like, we provide an incentive to share stories, and then try to take that one step further by encouraging people who are going to participate in your event to do something tangible. And when we say an action, it can be like bringing people together who would not normally encounter each other, or it could be asking people to do something. So actions have been stuff like having a panel with scientists, as part of a theater program, let's say, or collaborating with the sustainability office of your university, or writing letters to your legislators. There's some places have gotten really creative, and they, instead of charging an admission fee, most events are free, but they said, okay, for the admission, you have to bring some non-perishable food, and at the end we'll collect all of this food and we'll give it to a food bank. This money has been raised for hurricane relief efforts, for tree planting. I mean, it's across the board, and it's really amazing what people come up with. Now, to come back to stories, so when we commissioned the playwrights to write the plays, the first year, we had the idea kind of last minute. Like, we came up with the idea in July, and then we scrambled, put something together with no resources, and it happened in October, I think. So it was really grassroots. Like, we tried to do our best, but it was the first time. We didn't quite know what we were doing, and but we pulled it together. So there was no prompt. We just asked playwrights like, we're doing this, can you write a play? And they were like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And then afterwards, we became more organized. And also we noticed that, of course, the first impulse is to, for somebody who has maybe never written about this, is to sort of repeat what the headlines are saying, right? It's to go to a negative place, is to present dystopian world, to present a worst case scenario, apocalyptic scenarios. And I understand the impulse. It's the impulse of wanting to scare people into action, saying like, this is where we're heading. The problem is that by now, like maybe that worked 10 years ago, but by now we've all heard that story and not much action has been taken. So it's not so useful anymore, and it doesn't really scare people into action. It just makes them pull away and not wanting to engage. So of course we never, I'm a playwright, so I'm not in the business of telling people what to do, but we try to guide a little bit. So I'm going to show you here. This is our theme for 2019. So the last time we did it, the theme was lighting the way. And I'm going to read you what the prompt was for the playwright. So we said to the playwright, this year, we want to give center stage to the unsung climate warriors and climate heroes who are lighting the way towards a just and sustainable future. These may be individuals or communities fighting for justice or inventing new technologies. They may be animals, plants, or spirits imparting wisdom, or they may be a part of yourself you didn't know was there. Feel free to be literal or not, and to travel forward or backward in time. So we, gently encouraged playwrights to go a little bit towards the positive. Like, what are these amazing people or things or animals who are, doing things that are, they're the winners, right? We don't have to only think about the losers. We can also think about the winners. And it was like, please try to find the stories that are not covered by the headlines, the stories that we're not hearing. And I'm going to give you some examples of the stories that we're told, which this is always like one of the most pleasurable things to do, is when the playwrights start sending their plays and we're like, oh my God, look what they wrote. And I never would have thought of that. So some of the examples, some people wrote about new technologies. One of the plays being about shoes made of mango leather. It's a real thing. Some stories retold old myths and stories that incorporate climate change. What it means to be a hero was also one of the themes that was written about. Coming together as a community, giving legal rights to nature, and standing up to big corporations. And we haven't announced it yet, but we have a new theme for 2021, which we hope will be just as inspiring and as exciting for everybody to engage with. And now just to give you, I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what happens when we do this festival. So where does it happen? I mentioned it a little bit before, but here are more examples. So in theaters, for sure. At universities, high schools, and middle schools. So we've had even young kids engage. The plays, some plays are more appropriate than others. So when we have high school or middle school teachers contact us, usually they'll ask us which plays are appropriate, and we kind of make a selection for them, and we say, you can choose among those. All kinds of places outside and in public areas. This was, of course, before COVID. Library, churches, community centers, the foot of glaciers I mentioned, in kayaks. Those are two of my favorite ones, and radios and podcasts. Oops, sorry. Now, the kinds of actions that are taken, I've also mentioned, donations, tree planting initiatives, food banks, marches and pledges. There was a year where Massey University in New Zealand created I forget what they called it. It was a march, but instead of marching to Parliament. They marched the opposite way from Parliament back to the university, and it was to make a statement that since the government wasn't taking enough action, they were taking it in their own hands. But they all marched wearing penguin costumes. Like they were all fully dressed in penguin costumes. So it was pretty noticeable, and they sent amazing photos from that. Presentations by scientists and local environmental organizations, and resources also. We provide resources to organizers, but sometimes they also will compile their own list of resources that are a bit more local. Now I'm going to show you the trailer. This is a trailer we did for the 2019 events. And it was using, one thing I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We keep in touch with the organizers all through the season, I should call it, and we try to support them. We will post their events on social media. It all goes on our website, which has a world map with pins, where all of the events are taking place, and you can click on the pins and you'll get the full information. And then at the end, we asked them for a little bit of information. So we asked, how did it go? Can you give us any feedback on what was impactful? How many people were part of the organizing team? So that includes the producers, if they call themselves that way, the actors, and whoever helped put the event together, and how many people attended. And then we asked them to send us photos and video footage if they have it. So we have this huge bank of photos from all the years, and some video footage that's, not everybody's able to do video footage, and the quality varies, but we still have a lot of material. And also I forgot to say, there are some people who do some things like will create short films. There have been Pomona College one year did adaptations of several of the plays into short films, and then those all go on our YouTube channel. But what you'll see in this trailer is some of the footage we collected from 2015 and 2017 and from events around the world. And that was used to create this trailer, which is about 90 seconds. So this gives you a little sense of the wide variety of events that people organize. I'm always very pleased, if I can say so, because it's one person can only do so much, but when you open it up to as many people as you can, it's amazing what people can create. Now, another thing I'm pretty proud of is the number of people we were able to reach, and that has increased every time we've done it. I don't know what it will mean for 2021 because of the restrictions in gathering, but so these are the numbers for 2019. We had over 200 events in 28 countries. For the first time, and we had to work really hard at this, all 50 US states were represented. We've been trying, and in 2017, for a few weeks, we thought we had everybody, and then every state, and then some people had to drop, and we ended up with 41 stayed in the end, but in 2019 we were able to have all 50 US states participate, and I'm curious to see if we are going to be able to replicate that. 3,000 participants, these are the people who organize the events, and 26,000 audience members across the world. And one thing to know is that doing this in 2019, there's essentially three of us who, you know, truth be told, are like over our head while it happens, because it's so much work to organize, but still there's three of us working on this, and not even full time. And it cost about the same as putting up a small production, you know, in a 99-seat theater in New York City that would have 20 participants and 1,500 audience members. So the impact for the resources that are invested is huge. Of course, that doesn't take into consideration what the events themselves, the kind of resources they put into their events. So we don't, we just take care of the overall organization, but each organizer is responsible for their own events. I would like to show you a little bit more photos of the events that have taken place. So we also, every time we do this, we do a big kickoff event in New York City. So this was part of our kickoff event in 2019, and it took place at Caveat, which is a venue in the Lower East Side that has for mission to bring together the sciences and the performing arts. So it was, we were happy to be there. It was good for them, and we fit into their mission, so it's perfect for us too. This is an event from Seoul in South Korea, and it was kids in a school who read the plays, and I don't remember exactly what they did afterwards, but so they chose plays that spoke to young kids. This was in a national park. So it's a theater company in Colorado, Bee Wilderness Theater Company. And they had a reading in the national park. Native Earth, is an indigenous company in Toronto that they already had a cabaret season that they always do. And they chose one play. So we have several indigenous playwrights who participated, and they chose one play that they added one play that was part of CCTA in each of their cabaret for, I think, 4 cabaret. And that was one of them. This is an event in Minnesota. I don't even know how to pronounce the name, Pitch Center for Arts Education. This was again a cabaret that often gets done, I think, on a regular basis at Yale University, and they chose to dedicate one to climate change theater action. Iowa University also did full-scale productions, and they even, theirs actually was, they've been, their event year after year gets bigger and bigger. So I think the first year, because we have a lot of repeat participants, so I think the first year was just something in class, then it was like a little bit bigger, but they didn't have much support from the school. And then this last one, they had a lot of support, and they did something at the school, in the theater. They did something outside on campus, and then they did something where they took it to the local library to be able to reach more people from the community. And this is from Massey University in New Zealand, where they created a little bit of an opening, a devised opening, and then that was followed by some of the CCTA plays. And I want to show you another graph. So some of you may know this. It's called the Six Americas study. This is the same two organizations that did the previous graph I showed about people who, whether they talk or don't talk about climate change with family and friends. And this one looks at where Americans fall on a continuum between what they call, like at one end of the spectrum is alarm. So those who are really, believe in climate change, are most concerned, most motivated, usually most active. And on the other end of the spectrum, those who are not, who are dismissive. So those would be the climate deniers. And this study has been done for several years, and it changes every year, and it's actually going in the right direction. So there are more and more people who are moving towards the alarm category and less in the denier category. But I'm showing this because a lot of time the question we are asked about, climate change theater action, or actually any theater or arts that engage with the climate, is, aren't you preaching to the choir? And yes, we are. Of course we are, because first of all, how many people go to the theater? That's already a small portion of the population. And then of those, how many would be interested in going to see a climate change play, right? So no denier is going to say, let me go see a climate change play. They're not interested to start with. So we're not trying to change anybody's mind. What we're trying to do is, as you can see, if you add the most alarm and the most and the deniers, if you add those two percentages, they still don't make up. It's like smaller than everybody in between, right? It's like 31% plus. I can't see my screen on the other side. 10%. So that's 41%, which means that the greatest number of people fall in between those two categories. And these are the people, like, this is the choir I want to preach to. These are the people who are interested, they are concerned. Maybe they feel isolated in their belief. Maybe they don't have the people around them, who take this as seriously. Maybe they want to do something, they don't know what. Maybe they need to be in a group of people to feel validated. Like, these are the people we're trying to move towards the alarm slowly, not by telling them what to do, but by saying, here are all kinds of stories, here are all kinds of people who share, your beliefs. There, we're all in a room together, and we invite you to engage with this. So I know that, and I hope I'm not sounding defensive here, because I know that a lot of time the question is being asked as if what we're doing doesn't really have any impact, because we're already talking to people who believe the same things we believe in. But I think that people who are asking the questions are thinking about a different kind of impact. They're thinking, like, we need to change the mind of the don't believe. And while that might be true on, on the political scale, if we're talking about, like, on a population scale, I don't think the people who don't believe in climate change are the ones who have the most impact in what's happening, because they're the smallest percentage of the population. So in closing, here is oh, maybe there is no closing. Hold on. Yeah, here I have one more slide. So you can see the website for the Arctic Cycle. You can also see the website for Climate Change Theater Action. As I said, the next one is in 2021. The plays are being commissioned this fall, and we'll have them by the beginning of next year. So usually in March or April, we start looking for people who want to, organize something. If that's something you feel might be of interest, you can go to the Arctic Cycle website, sign up for our mailing list, and these are the people who find out first when we're ready to start recruiting organizers. And I hope what I leave you with is a sense that, yes, it's important, crucial to do all the work we can on sustainability and on very physical change. But I think if we want that change to last and to feel good, we also have to work on how we change the whole culture. So what stories we tell each other, how we understand how we fit in this world. And it's important to engage with these stories, not to preach, not to change anybody's mind, but just so this thinking becomes part of who we are. And it's almost like the difference between writing a play about being gay and writing a play where there are gay characters, right? At some point it has to become normal. It just has to become part of who we are. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I feel so inspired, and I'm so excited for next year when the next cycle happens. And I hope that lots of people here will either get involved organizing or will at least be participants and watching in whatever new and exciting format it happens in. But with that, we are now in the Q&A section, and I see that we already have some questions building. So I'll invite the questions in the chat to ask questions verbally, if you're comfortable, starting in order with Susan.
Thank you, Chantal. That was terrific. I was wondering if the playwrights get paid when you say you commission them. Are they paid something?
Yeah.
And do they get something based also on how many places they're performed, or is it just a commission?
They get a commission, and they agree that the plays will be performed without any royalties for that window. So as soon as, December roll around, they keep the rights to the plays, but as soon as December rolls around, then if anybody wants to produce the plays, they get in touch with the playwrights, and then they can negotiate if they want to be paid.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. I see we have a question here from somebody who left, so I'll share it with you after, Chantal, so that you can respond via email. Bailey, do you want to share your question with us?
Sure. So we at Lehigh did a play that wasn't about climate change, but the scenery was about climate change, and there was like hints of climate change disaster like peppered in, and we got a lot of really great audience feedback. So I was wondering if you did feedback things on plays that were like mostly focused on climate change and had another storyline, or had another storyline with a little bit of climate change. I didn't know. I'm assuming you have a variety. I didn't know how the audience responded to those two separate kind of plays.
Yeah, there's no distinction. We never made the distinction. And you're right. Some plays are like directly engaged with it and some don't. The one thing we did though, and I should have mentioned that, is this in 2019, we had a graduate student, a PhD student who worked with us, and she did a study to figure out the impact of the work on people's beliefs and behavior. And she did that through some surveys and personal interviews. And she has some preliminary data, but she's still in the process of compiling everything. But again, it doesn't make that distinction. It was just like, if you attended the event, how did you feel before and after?
Great, thank you. Allison, I see your comment that you'd like to be involved next year, and that's so exciting. Do you want to click on and just share your thoughts as to this presentation?
Sure, yeah. So I'm not really part of theater. I love going to theater. What's the best way for someone like me to get involved? Like, I love organizing events. Can I just be like, hey, actor friends, come hang out with me and do this thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there are people who've done that before, and a lot of people who are not necessarily in the theater, like faith organizations have participated, in environmental organization, and there's a person I know who his parents were having a party, so he made the guests, he presented plays to the guests. It's like, these are people who would not engage with this issue. They're not against it, but they're just like a little distance, and he made them watch some plays. So yeah, you can do anything you can imagine, you can do it.
I love that. Allison, does that spark any ideas for you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the wheels are turning. So thank you.
Great. Susan.
I just wanted to say something a little bit about the BGA in terms of, one of the things that I love about some of our people that they do is I like what you said, Chantal, about that it isn't about preaching and it's not about, that it's about looking at a green as part of the story you're telling, that it doesn't have to be about what you said about gay characters, that it doesn't have to be a gay play, there could be gay characters. And we have designers who talk about when they design having a green lens, right? That they're looking at it. It doesn't have to be a play about sustainability, but they're looking at sustainability as part of what they're doing when they're doing anything. So I just wanted to share that with the group because I think that's kind of an important thing is that as people are thinking about the events they do or the gatherings they do or the events they do or whatever, you can add that lens to anything you do and just make it part of the conversation and make it part of the your thinking about it changes how you approach it. So Allison, I hope you get something from that because I think that's the thing is that it's not so much about I have to be the green person. I have to be part of a green group. I have to be an actor. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It's about, how do I have these conversations? I have this group of people, and how do I bring that into somewhere where we already are? And that was the other thing with the BGA is that we go to where people are. We don't try to bring people to us. So if any of you have places where you are already doing theater or you are already doing gatherings and you can bring that to that group, great for you and great for us and great for the planet. So that's kind of where we try to go with this. And I would just encourage everybody else to be thinking that way.
And thank you, Susan. And one thing I would add to this is then tell the story because I hear from people it's like, oh yeah, we did all this great stuff backstage and then nobody knows. The audience doesn't know. It's like, tell the story. This is so exciting. People need to know.
Yep.
That's absolutely perfect. I think the amplification effect is so key. Sorry, I see more questions. Lauren, did you have one? Great.
Yeah, but I saw someone in the chat. They wanted.
Go ahead. We'll go next.
Okay, cool. Hi, I had a question. So I'm a fellow writer as well. One of my poems is actually published in like our undergraduate like literary journal, and then I wrote a play back in high school, and it got a Superior in our little districts festival that we have here. And my question for you is, as someone who's like so passionate about her work and so influential, how do you combat writer's block? Like, how would you go about that? Like finding inspiration in different avenues.
I don't know if my answer is going to be so helpful, but usually, I mean, most of the time now I have deadlines that affect other people. And like, that's just enough, right? Yeah. When it's you on your own, it's easier to get blocked. But when there are people waiting for it and you just have to do it. You just have to do it. So that has been, and that's how I used when like years ago when I was in school, I used to try to find even fake deadlines if it was for a contest or something, because it seems to be, I mean, I have missed deadline, but still, I don't do that easily. It seems to be the one thing where I will, like, if I know other people are depending on what I'm supposed to deliver, then that's enough to like make me work through whatever block I have.
Gotcha.
Lauren, I don't know if this helps, but I love the idea that Chantal has prompts for her playwrights and that the prompts give them something to write about. So for you as a writer, you might look for places that sponsor contests and sponsor things where they give you prompts, where they basically suggest ideas of what you could write about, and see if that gives you some inspiration of what you would want to tell. And I love the idea of what Chantal is talking about telling stories. So if you think about it that way of what story do I want to tell that has to do with the topic of this contest, this group, this whatever, maybe that'll give you some of the inspiration.
Thank you. I agree.
Great. Bailey, you have a question.
So does your program encourage the productions to be green in the execution of them? I feel like sometimes theaters will do a play about a topic but not practice what they preach a little bit, and So is that something your company encourages the companies producing them to do?
Yeah, we can't enforce it, but we definitely encourage it, and we try to give it a little bit of resources. Something else that does happen on the design side, though, is that I have a partner, Ian Garrett, who is at York University, who is a designer and teaches sustainable design, and in collaboration with a company called Triga Creative. I always get it wrong. I always think it's collective, but it's creative. Triga Creative, also based in Toronto. They did a eco design charrette in December, where they designed all 50 plays. They did seed design for all 50 plays, and they had a number of guests who came to talk about eco scenography, like mycelium, like all kinds of things I don't know, materials and stuff. And but it was somewhat separate. Those were not connected to the events, but it was another way of showing that, you can be creative, like having creative limitations on how you do something doesn't mean that you can't do good work.
That's great. Thank you, Chantal. And this is where I think there's such a beauty in partnership and collaboration, because at the BGA, we have a lot of resources and focus a lot on the actual green production. And so you can go to our website, where we have also partnered with Ian Garrett, and you can see this collaborative effect of all of these worlds and all of these groups rowing in the same direction, right? So I would encourage everyone to go to our website and to the resources to look up, to see about how to actually make the work you're doing in telling these climate stories sustainable, and then use the tools that Chantal just talked about to story tell about it, to amplify it. And go to Ian's website and learn from him and his expertise. And just, you can start to see, not only is it all of these functions working together, but it's across borders, it's across specialties, and we all bring our own, our own voice and our own skill to the table. And so I think that's really exciting. Yes, and the other place that you can look is that, in fact, we are working with collaborators, Ian and over at Barnard, Sandra, and we're coming out with a sustainable production toolkit that is going to focus even more, and specifically right now, in light of the changes that COVID is creating, on this work. And we have 2 green quarantines from this summer that were a preview of the kit. So if you're interested in that work, I recommend going back and watching those on demand on our website or on our YouTube. But that kit will be available too. And that's also a collaboration of so many folks, again, across different specialties and different expertises, that will allow you to get involved in the 2021 festival, and then use those practices to make the actual work greener.
Do you know when the kit is coming out, Molly?
Not the actual date. It is still, but it is in process and being finalized. It's just, there's so many great collaborators and heads going into it.
Okay.
Great. Charlie, question.
I always forget to unmute, so I don't actually have a question. I wanted to, Chantal, say thank you for something that I consider special in this whole intersection of theater and environment. I want to thank you for having given people a way to have their own voice, to tell their own stories, to inspire others, and to not be blocked by having to have it be of grand scope, of having it to be uniquely profound, so that people can start speaking with their own passion and inspiring others. There's a lot in the environmental movement that is preachy. There's a lot in the environmental that are toolkits, and I value the toolkits very highly. But there's a lot of how-tos, and there's less storytelling that inspires people to find the how-tos. And your what you've been doing has been giving people permission to find their own voice, find their own inspiration, which then leads people to take actions using those many other resources. So I just wanted to thank you for the special work you've been doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
All right, I am aware of the time, and that was a beautiful note to end on. So with that, I am going to wrap us up with just a giant thank you to you, Chantal, for sharing this hour with us, your expertise, your passion. And I'm so excited for all the folks again watching here and watching later to find the Climate Change Theater Action, find Arctic Cycle, get involved with the next one, watch old ones, and really find, as we said, find your voice and start telling this story. So thank you,
Molly.
Just a reminder, we will be back next week. And next week is a really special session because it's hands-on. We're going to be using our skills, using our hands with Sandra Goldmark, who is the author of the book, Fixation, How to Have Stuff Without Breaking the Planet. So next week we'll be, getting to work, fixing stuff, learning how to use our theater maker skills. And then 2 weeks from then, we will be with Dr. Sonali McDermott doing a skill up on climate and the climate impacts on the global food system. So see you back here. And thank you all. Thank you, Chantal.
Bye.